Go. Hey, everybody. I think we're live now, Jamie. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Marcia Civic with Be Provided Conservation Radio. I am excited to be talking to the Humboldt chapter of Raptors Are the Solutions director, Jaime Carlino. And HumRats has a mission to educate the public about the dangers of widespread use of toxic rodenticides, and that's going to be our main topic today, and the ecological role of raptors in urban and wild places. I asked Jamie on the show to get the word out about these toxic rat poisons. I think it's something that we all need to learn about, and many people are just unaware of this, and I think you can't change what you don't know. So hopefully after hearing about this, that hearing about rodenticides and the damage they're causing, that we can make changes to better protect our wildlife. Before we get started, I just want to cover a little bit of logistics. We usually take questions, and we're happy to take questions, but we're going to be answering the questions after the show. So you can just leave some comments in the comments below the video, and we'll get to those because I can see them. And if you just want to stop by and say hello, that's great too. Anyways, we'll get on with the information. So, hi, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, welcome. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah. Good. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And I didn't give a lot of information about you. I thought I'd let you give us a little background of how you got involved with this work and give us a little background about HumRats and what you're doing there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I grew up in California Central Valley, and it's really an agricultural hub. So I became aware of a lot of the issues associated with widespread pesticide use at a pretty early age. And then in high school, I started volunteering for a local wildlife rehabilitation center in Fresno. And that's where I really became exposed to specifically the impacts of rodenticide use. And that's also around the same time that I became familiar with Raptors Are the Solution. And I transferred to Humboldt State University a few years ago to pursue a bachelor's degree in wildlife management and conservation. And I had some friends and colleagues that were going to a disease conference, and Lisa was going to be there. So I asked if they would sort of introduce me to her, and got her contact information. And this is something I've been really passionate about for a while. And for my undergraduate studies, I explored barn owl nest box selection in agricultural ecosystems of the Central Valley. And so rodenticides, they go hand in hand with that topic. And so I had never seen anyone doing any work like this around Humboldt County. And if you've never been to Humboldt County, it's an absolutely gorgeous place. And we have lots of really amazing wildlife. And so I wanted to start something like rats locally. And so that's how HumRats became HumRats. And we educate Humboldt County residents and people beyond Humboldt County about the effects of rodenticides, like you said. And we do this through presentations, and we're hoping to do some tabling events before COVID happened. And we were also wanting to make a direct impact in terms of rodenticides being used and sold in Humboldt County. And so we were visiting local stores that we suspected may sell rodenticides, as well as keeping an eye out for bait boxes, which, as I'll discuss later, are pretty indicative of anticoagulant rodenticide use, and then reaching out to these businesses that are either selling or using rodenticides, educating them about the effects, and offering them non-toxic alternatives, just offering our knowledge to help them use other things that aren't going to have cascading effects. And so a lot of that has been stalled because of COVID, but we're hoping to start that back up as things start opening up again.
Yay. Yeah, and hopefully this will help you get some of the information out that you want as well. So, and also if people are listening and they don't get to listen to it live, it will be recorded as well. So yeah, and we've talked to Lisa. I've talked to maybe 4 people on the show about rodenticides before. Rebecca Dimitrick, Ty Moses from Santa Cruz, Lisa, and you. So I think I could talk about this weekly just to keep getting the word out because I'm so passionate about it. So thank you. I'm glad you got involved. So let's talk raptors a little bit, and their natural skills, their natural rodent killing machines, and I was hoping you could explain a little bit about how they can do that. Owls in particular, it sounds like you studied barn owls, and I think they can eat, 1,000 rodents in a year? So
well over
just one. Yeah. So that's, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
Sure. Raptors, it's not really set in stone what birds are considered raptors, but generally they include like owls, hawks, falcons, eagles, some other groups. But generally I'll be referring to those birds, and they are specially adapted to prey on other organisms like rodents, using their very sharp beaks and talons, which allow them to capture and kill other animals very effectively. And then they also have an interesting adaptation allowing them to detect UV light that is reflected. So we aren't able to do that, but they are. And so that enables them to see the scent marking trails that rodents leave.
Yeah. And I have a picture of that. I'll pop it up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So that can, lead them to an area that rodents frequent, or possibly lead them directly to a rodent. And then they also have really large eyes relative to their skull size, and owls specifically have a lot more rods in their eyes, which allows them to see better at night, hence why a lot of owls are nocturnal or crepuscular. And owls as well also have asymmetrical ear openings, and there's a photo of that if you could throw that up on the screen.
Certainly, yeah.
So what that looks like is they don't have external ears like we do. So their ear openings are, one of them is higher or lower than the other, and that allows them to really be effective at catching rodents. And so when they're directly over a rodent, that sound is going to signal equally in both ears. And they also have these magnificent facial discs, which sort of act as satellites, the way that we would kind of cup our ears, and we're able to hear better when we do that. Those facial discs help funnel sound into their ear openings. And their wings are really unique in that they have these serrations on the leading edges of their wings, which we also have a photo of.
Yep.
And so that's a really up-close view of those wing serrations. And those are on the leading edges of the wings, so that when they're flying, they're virtually silent and go undetected by rodents.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen owls take off from trees, and you can't hear anything, like any flapping of wings or anything. It's amazing. But
there are a lot of really interesting documentaries that compare the sound of an owl flying to other species like falcons or pigeons and things like that.
So owls are the only birds with that serration then? Serrated edge? Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, and I didn't realize about the asymmetrical ears. Like I've seen the great horned owls. It looks like one of their horns is always bigger than the other. Is that where their ears are? Right underneath that?
So the feathers that you see on a great horned owl, those are actually not their ears. Those are just ornaments that help with camouflaging. Their ears are, like I said, they don't have any external ears like we do. They're just holes that if you sort of push back the feathers of the facial disc, you'll see just a hole. And like I said, they're asymmetrical, so it depends on the species which ear hole is higher or lower. But yeah, one of them will be higher or lower than the other.
That's interesting. And as far as being natural rat killing machines, we mentioned that barn owls can eat up to 1,000 individually each year, eat that many rats. And if they have a family, they can probably eat up to 3,000 during a brooding or breeding season, or
So there was actually a study done in Napa Valley where they found that plus or minus 1,000 rodents were delivered to each chick.
Wow.
So if you have an average brood size of 3 chicks, that's just the chicks alone are consuming 3,000 rodents in one breeding season.
Wow.
So it's pretty astonishing. That's not even including what the adults are consuming. And so if you are, extrapolate out, however many barn owl boxes there are in just an area like Napa Valley, that's pretty astonishing how many rodents they can remove in just one breeding season.
Wow. Yeah, we just need to start putting up barn owl boxes everywhere, I think. I mean, it seems like they're adaptable. I mean, I've seen barn owls, go into urban areas even, and it seems like, so they would be okay, I would think. But interesting. So, yep. So we need to start putting up owl boxes. We just started putting up some here on our property as well. So I'm excited for next year. Yeah, I hope so. Let's see. So I was going to ask, we talked a lot about rodenticides, and even though I've talked on the show a lot about it, a lot of listeners today may not know what rodenticides are, and why, and are they still available to the public generally? Why do we still get them? So
rodenticides are a type of pesticide that target rodents, and generally they are split into 3 categories. So there are the non-anticoagulant rodenticides, and I have a slide that includes some examples of that, as well as packaging, like what they look like in the stores. And so those kill in a variety of different ways. There are then anticoagulant rodenticides, which are split into 2 groups. There are the first generation anticoagulant rodenticides, which I have some examples of as well. Those should be on the screen for you guys to look at. And those, we've been using first generation anticoagulant rodenticides for decades. We've been aware of their effects on non-target species. It's been discussed in the literature for decades. And so what happened is rats started developing a resistance to these poisons, and so that's when we can develop the second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. And I'll probably from now on just refer to anticoagulant rodenticides as ARs from now on.
Okay.
So those second generation ARs, they only require a single dose to be lethal to a rodent, whereas the first generations, they can, they require multiple doses to be lethal. And so what that looks like on the landscape is if we have ARs out in the environment, rodents are consuming bait that have these ARs in them, and they may not die immediately. Oftentimes they don't die immediately, and so they're continuing to move about the landscape, a lot of times consuming even more of these ARs. And in the meantime, as these poisons are starting to take their effect, they start staggering about and become really easy prey for animals higher in the food chain, like raptors and mountain lions and bobcats. So that's really what that looks like on the landscape. And as far as these poisons being available to consumers, there was a California law passed in 2014 that banned consumer use of these second generation ARs specifically. And so now, though, there's a huge loophole in that law that allows licensed pest control companies to continue administering those poisons. So while we as consumers can no longer go to a hardware store and purchase them, we can still go purchase those huge 5-pound buckets of first generation ARs, but pest control companies are still administering them on the landscape, and there hasn't been a reduction in wildlife poisoning since that law was passed. So that's kind of indicating that it wasn't initially consumer use of those second generation ARs that was the issue in the first place.
Wow. That's just crazy. So those bait boxes that were in that last slide that I showed, they have usually they're usually second generation, or they're a combination sometimes of first and second generation.
Yeah, I think most of the time they are second generations. They can be a combination of different second gens, I think, or first and second gen. But yeah, that's one thing that I would really like to emphasize is that those bait boxes that are on that slide, like I said earlier, those are really indicative of second generation AR use. So a lot of people don't know that. So I think making that connection for people is really important. So if you see those around, those businesses are they're not just put out there for free. Like, those businesses are seeking out pest control companies that are putting them out there.
Wow. Yeah, and I mean, there's a small shopping area on the west side in Santa Cruz that has, a number of shops. Each shop has at least 2 bait boxes. It's so overkill. I mean, I don't know if they expect an army of rats coming into this area to, it's just crazy. And then there's nesting great horned owls in natural bridges just down the street that I worry about. And yeah, my sister and I were driving down West Side once, and Bobcat was crossing the street on Western Avenue in Santa Cruz, and just delirious to the traffic on Highway 1. And the poor thing, you could tell it had mange, and it was we called it in. They found it. Unfortunately, it did die, and I think they said that it did have at least 3 or 4 different types of rat poison in it, the poor thing. So
yeah, that's usually the case.
Yeah.
When these animals are tested, they usually have multiple different
Yeah.
ARs. Even, some of them have both first and second gen ARs.
Wow. And you mentioned some of the collateral damage. Of course, it's bobcats. Anything that would eat rats that ingest this rat poison, right? But they're finding rodenticides in a lot of different things right now, unfortunately. So
Yeah, basically, I mean, these poisons have infiltrated every level of the food web. It's pretty shocking. Even, I mean, the more like research that I read, I'm continuously shocked at the organisms that are affected by these rodenticides. I mean, it ranges from invertebrates like snails and slugs and mollusks,
wow.
earthworms, even like carrion fly larvae have been found containing residues of these rodenticides.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share those papers with you.
Yeah.
To, I mean, insectivorous passerines, which, if you think that, the insects that they're feeding their offspring are likely containing residues of these ARs, to, like you said, any animal that consumes rats, and even beyond that, animals higher in the food chain that aren't consuming rodents, lots of bears, the obvious raptors, mountain lions, bobcats, foxes, basically it would be easier to ask what animals aren't
Yeah,
affected.
yeah.
And I don't know if I would have an answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, even sea otters, they're finding from the runoff in these urban areas, that are near waterways. I think they found some in some sea otters at some point. That's scary. And before this show, a woman emailed me and she said a friend of hers just lost her pet dog because it probably ingested a rat that consumed, rat poison or something. And it can affect children too. I mean, these pellets are made to be kind of tasty, right? For rats, they're probably sugary or something. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
That's why they work. They attract the animal to it, and then it consumes it. So yeah, and
yeah.
that's one thing rats. I mean, although we do a lot of education about non-target species of wildlife being affected,
Hmm.
we definitely don't ignore the issue of pets and children also being affected. It's, like I said, it's widespread. It's infiltrated every level of the food web. It's pretty crazy.
It's crazy. It's like, I tell people it's like the DDT of our time, and I've read that other places as well. And yeah, what can we do? We need to change this. So it's crazy. Um, but yeah, have you personally experienced a raptor, or have you experienced seeing an animal exposed?
I have, yeah,
Yeah.
with the work that I did with the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, we would get animals that were exposed, raptors, foxes, coyote, and then also cats. Um, not my cats, but friends that have had cats that they've lost their cats because a neighbor had put out poison. And, I don't know if they were directly targeting the neighborhood cats or what, but yeah,
Yeah.
those are experiences that you never really forget. And sort of, I mean, even ongoing, even though I personally haven't found an animal that's suffered from rodenticide poisoning in a while since I quit doing the rehab work, just the ongoing occurrence of other people finding, these beautiful animals that have died because of these poisons. There have been
Yeah.
some recent press releases that Raptors put out about a variety of different animals, a lot of bobcats and a lot of great horned owls recently.
Yeah, I see those posts come across, and it really breaks my heart to see that. And yeah, I worry about my neighbors here. I live up in the mountains, and we have so much wildlife. We have gray fox, we have bobcat up here, mountain lion that we capture on our game camera, and I just worry. It's just
Yeah,
constantly like, I don't want a neighbor to move in that uses rat poison. And I know we'll get into how people can do this, but I did print out, yard signs like political signs, and I have them like along where my mailbox is, like, nesting owls here, please do not use rat poison. So,
yeah,
uh,
that's what I'm gonna suggest. That
yeah,
it's good that you're doing that. Rat has so many different informative and really effective outreach materials on their website that are available for free that people like you're doing, if they know that they have a lot of wildlife in their area or they have a raptor nest that they've been watching throughout the breeding season, those are materials that if you're able to definitely want to print out and
yeah.
post around your neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They haven't gotten stolen yet, so that's a good sign.
But
Anyways, but just to, if anybody, hopefully nobody's eating their lunch, but right now. But I was going to ask, like these deaths from rat poison from cats and other animals and mammals, it's a slow death. It's like they bleed from the inside out, right? And, basically hemorrhage. They don't coagulate their blood. That's why it's an anticoagulant. And um, yeah, and it's just really sad. It takes them a very long time to suffer because their immune system's just shot as well. Yeah, and I was just curious by mentioning that, like, once an animal is found and we take it into a rehab center, can they recover? Is there a good chance that if they're caught in time to recover?
yeah, there are treatments I don't have firsthand experience, but if an animal is found in enough time, they can be treated in a wildlife
Okay.
rehabilitation center. But I also wanted to add that even if you find an animal that is already dead, but you suspect that it died due to rodenticide poisoning, and that would look like if you find an animal that there's no external signs of trauma, they look perfectly fine. But I still recommend taking them to a wildlife rehabilitation center and asking if they can send that animal off to be tested for if there are residues of rodenticides in their liver or in their blood. That's one thing that RATS does is they help fund testing of these animals. Like the rehab that I volunteered for, we were a really small organization and funds were really tight. So we didn't have the funds to send those animals off and be tested.
Right.
But if you do find an animal, contact your local rehab center, and then I would recommend contacting Raptors Are the Solution. And hopefully they can arrange for that animal to be tested.
That's great. And just to mention that the raptors are the solution, or rats, if we've been referring to, they're all over the place right now. They're in many states, which is nice. Not just here in the California area. So I forgot how many states they're involved. Your rats is located, but that's on their website as well. Interesting. So can we start talking about how do we control? I know I don't like rats in my house either, but they are around. So how can we control this without poisoning the rats and helping our wildlife?
So there is a really effective infographic. If you could pop that on the screen.
That's that alternatives. Yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully it might be kind of tiny, but just to remind people, this is some information on the RATS website as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone can access for free.
Yeah.
We really want to emphasize being proactive about it, and so that's what a lot of the tips in that infographic are showing and explaining. So that includes um, excluding rodents from your house. So if you have any small openings, rodents can fit through really, really, really small openings, like the size of a dime. So
Wow.
making sure that, if you can check around your house, like especially your garage, making sure that you exclude rodents that way. And then also things like if you compost, we recommend using a spinning composter rather than just having a compost pile in your yard. Removing any sort of low, dense vegetation like ivy, that's a really good hideout for rats. Trimming your trees so that the distance from trees to your house is a bit further so they can't make that jump onto roofs. And then, making sure that any sort of ducts on your roofs are covered and inaccessible to rodents. If you have chicken coops, raising those like a foot and a half off the ground is beneficial and important. There's all kinds of things. And that graphic, like I said, it does a really good job at showing all the different things that people can do to prevent rodent issues. And if you already have an established rodent issue, there are ways to deal with it without using poisons. Using poisons are really just a lazy way to go about it. So there are electric traps. There are, of course, snap traps. And if you're going to use either of those, we really emphasize that they need to be in an enclosed space so that they're inaccessible to wildlife and pets and even children. And then the cayenne pepper, if you know the routes that they're taking, you can sprinkle cayenne pepper on their trails, and then that way it gets on their feet. And if they're cleaning themselves, then they're consuming the pepper and it doesn't taste good, I assume.
Probably burns a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you do contact a pest control company, um, being firm and saying no to poisons is important.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I talked with Lisa and Rebecca Dimitrick about this as well. I don't know if you're aware of it, as I'm sure you are, contrapest as well.
Mhm.
You can ask some of these pesticide companies can have some of those alternatives if you ask and know how to ask. And
Exactly.
yeah, contrapest is a contraceptive, right,
Yeah.
for rats, so it makes them so they don't reproduce.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
it does. You have to use it like continuously.
yeah,
Um, and there's a whole section on the Raptors Association website that has a lot of information about preferred products and as well as preferred pest control companies in different areas. And that's one thing that I'm trying to work on in Humboldt County is developing a list of pest control companies that people can feel comfortable and that we can feel comfortable referring to people that have non-toxic alternatives or don't use second gen ARs or first gen ARs altogether.
right. So it seems like the a big goal right now for us to fight for is to try to get through some legislation about banning pesticide companies from using these rodenticides. And I know Rats is involved with pushing through the Assembly Bill 1788 that is going on. I was wondering if you could just give us an update of what's happening with that. I think they're co-sponsoring that with the Center for Biological Diversity, I believe, and probably
Yeah,
something else I can't remember. Yeah.
yeah, they're co-sponsoring that bill with a great deal of other
Yeah.
organizations. So that bill would limit the use of these second gen ARs. It was initially going to ban them with certain exemptions, and then there was talk about rewording the bill to just make them prohibitively expensive so that people couldn't use them. And unfortunately, the bill is stalled in the wake of COVID.
Yeah.
So we are really pushing for people to sign and send a postcard, which is located on the website, to Governor Gavin Newsom, which is requesting an emergency moratorium on these poisons. In the meantime, their rats filed a lawsuit against the California Department of Pesticide Regulation, asking them to reevaluate direct and cumulative effects of both first generation and second generation ARs. And they've agreed to reevaluate second generation ARs, but have given no timeline on when that will be completed by. So basically, since the bill is stalled, we're hoping that we can push for a moratorium on the rodenticides until they have completed the reevaluation on those second gen ARs.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. And I know that this legislation takes time, and so how can people stay more informed, and how can we help, like, right now, stopping some of the use of rodenticides?
So, like I said, we're really pushing for people to go on our website and print out. There's a postcard with a beautiful photo of a barn owl on it,
Yeah.
and sign and send that to our governor. That's a big thing that people can do now. And also, if you do have a rodent issue and you contact a pest control company, like I said, being very firm that they do not use poisons, as well as sharing things that they've learned, whether it be, here today, or if they then go do research on this themselves, sharing this information with basically everyone that's close to you is a big deal because people generally, when they learn about this, they want to do the right thing, and it's just that they're unaware of it to begin with. And so when they're educated about it, people generally want to make the right decision. So
Yeah.
as many people as we can get to start talking about it is important. And then obviously using some of the preventative measures that we shared in that infographic, um, you can keep up to date with what's going on with rats, as well as all of its regional chapters, by following us on social media.
Mm-hmm.
We post a lot of educational things and updates. Um, and for people that are local to Humboldt County, they can contact us. There's a photo of a bait box that says, "Have you seen me?" So if you could pop that up on the screen, that would
Yep.
be great.
Yep.
Um, and so if you're local to Humboldt County, you can contact us, humrats@gmail.com. If you see these bait boxes, I think once people learn about them and start looking for them, they'll realize how, they're everywhere, especially up in Humboldt County. We're really progressive and sustainable in certain aspects, but it's a poison friendly community. So when people see these bait boxes, we're asking that they reach out to us, let us know where they've seen them, if they can include how many bait boxes there were, as well as information about the area. So if the area, if it's by a restaurant or something and
Yeah.
their trash cans are completely overflowing, including information like that is really helpful, so that we can then find the contact information for those places and reach out to the owners and managers and give them information about those rodenticides, as well as work with them to transition to non-toxic alternatives.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, if it's just as simple as maybe cleaning up the trash bins and making sure there's no food waste lying about, that's
Exactly.
great. I've approached. I don't know if you recommend this to people to approach, but there was a favorite coffee shop that I like to go to in Santa Cruz, and I looked outside and they had two bait boxes for just this tiny little space. And I asked for the owner, went in and asked, and I was like, there's like nesting great horned owls just a couple blocks away from you. And I told him about the bobcat, and he didn't know. He was like, oh no, I didn't realize. He was going to contact his pesticide company to see if there were alternatives. I haven't been back there yet because I'm kind of afraid that I'll still see bait boxes. But I'm hoping he was very receptive. So I think that sometimes people are willing to be educated. I think you're right on that. And he doesn't want to do the wrong thing. You
Yeah,
could tell. Yeah.
people
So.
don't.
But they hear stories from the pesticide company too. This doesn't kill any other wildlife. You see it on the boxes of certain poisons in the stores, hardware stores or wherever, that won't harm any other wildlife. But poison's poison, so people have to remember that. So
Yeah, I mean, the training that the technicians get is really minimal, considering the cascading impacts that
yeah,
poisons are putting on the bear herd. So
yeah, it's very scary, and yeah, so I hope we can get this fight won in some ways, in many ways. Get that bill passed is a big one. So we'll do what we can to keep people informed on that. Um, but yeah, I guess that exhausted some of my questions I had for you. But I always ask, what gives you hope moving forward? This is hard work, and it's hard mentally, physically.
yeah, it can be really discouraging, especially when I see the emails about the animals that people are finding. The photos are pretty excruciating to see,
Yeah.
um, but I would say, doing the outreach and the education, and then being successful, like the interaction that you had with the manager of the
Mm-hmm.
coffee shop, those kind of interactions and those success stories are really what keep me going, and I think keep a lot of the people involved with rats going. We had, home rats is relatively new, and we had just started a lot of our outreach before COVID, and so we have one success story, and hopefully we'll continue, more. But that was a really big deal for me and for the people that were helping me out on that. There was a city-owned building that had over 14 bait boxes
Oh my
around
gosh.
perimeter, and this building was just meters away from Humboldt Bay. And
Wow.
so we were able to reach out to a city official and let them know the effects of these poisons, and they pulled the bait boxes, and we're hoping to use that positive interaction to further work with the city to potentially remove all bait boxes around city buildings. So
Good.
it's things like that keep me going.
Yeah, that's good. And you had a success with the billboard, right?
Yeah,
You didn't mention that, right? Yeah,
you
yeah,
haven't mentioned that
yeah.
yet.
Okay.
If you're in Humboldt County or you're traveling to from through Humboldt County and you're on Highway 101,
Yeah.
there is a Raptors Solution billboard now that will be up until early July. And if you want to see that, it's on Highway 101 in between Arcata and Eureka. If you're heading southbound on the 101, it's a good spot to see it. And if anyone wants specific coordinates for the billboard, I'd be happy to share those with them in the comments.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think you were saying if you do go by, snap a picture and post it on Facebook, right? Show us.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Tag us your photos of the billboard. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think there was one put down or put up in, was it San Luis Obispo or somewhere down there? And I think they got a lot of positive feedback on that. So,
Yeah, there's been billboards scattered throughout, but I know they've had a couple of billboards down in that area.
yeah, nice. Well, thank you. I was going to put it out there if anybody has any questions. I didn't see any come up, so hopefully I am aware of all the comments out there. But if anybody has a question, please post it in the comments section for Jamie, even if it's after the show, and we'll go through and try to get those answered for you at some point. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about anything going on?
I don't think so. I guess just take what you've learned here today.
Yeah.
Hopefully you learned something and just share it with someone you know.
Perfect. Perfect. And yeah, hopefully when this COVID stuff gets done or whatever, that we can get back out and start actually interacting with the public more on this is going to be great. So, but
yeah, we're looking forward to that. And if you want to keep up on what we're doing, you can find Rats on Facebook by searching Humboldt Raptors Are the Solution, or we have an Instagram and you can find us there by searching for Rats. And then, of course, Raptors Are the Solution has social media as well. So following Rats and all of the regional chapters, because we all share kind of different things. So
nice. Oh, I wanted to ask you too before I forget. Are you taking any volunteers? Are you like, so can they contact you through the Facebook page if people want to help out in your area and ask you more?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
I really encourage community involvement. So whether it's, you want to volunteer, right now there's not a whole lot to do, but like I said, we're starting to continue our outreach. Obviously, we're not, going into stores and things like that, but reach out if you want to volunteer, or if you have any sort of experience, building things. We're also looking for people that can, construct barn owl boxes. And
Nice.
that's one of the things, I guess, that I didn't mention that I will mention really quickly.
Yeah.
Part of the outreach that Rats as well as Rats does for businesses that do transition away from using or selling rodenticides, or just have not used them and continue to not use them. Rats has a really awesome program called the Owl Wise Leader Award. So with that, we highlight businesses or schools, municipalities that don't use or sell rodenticides. And so in some cases that includes awarding them with a barn owl box, or at the very least, we try to publicize and get their business names out there, and encourage them for caring about our local ecosystems. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Nice. Owl Wise. Okay. And I'll post all I'll post some links to your information as well when I write up the show notes for this, and some of that information so people can look that up as well. Great. So, yeah. Well, thanks, Jaime. I really appreciate your time today and talking about this important topic. So,
yeah, I'm so grateful to have been on your show. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, all that you do too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And so I guess this concludes our show. I don't see any questions popping up. So a light day, everybody must be eating lunch right now. So like I said before, if you have questions, just leave them in the comments and we'll try to answer them after the fact. So thanks, Jaime. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll end the broadcast.
Okay.